Hi, I'm Karen.
And I'm Paul. Welcome to the Circular Coffee Club podcast.
Along 5 episodes, you will learn all about Schneider Electric's approach to circularity. Today, we're going back to where it all started. Circularity isn't a trend, it's something that existed long before modern industry, long before we used the word sustainability. Nature has always been circular.
And yet, somewhere along the way, especially after the Industrial Revolution, we shift to a linear model: extract, produce, discard. Now, the world is rediscovering why circularity matters for resilience, for resources, and for the smaller business.
So, today, we're unpacking what circularity really means, the origins, the evolution, and the why behind all the buzz.
And to help us dig into this topic, we have 3 great guests joining us remotely: Annie James, Nicolas Ortu, and Sheila Sonar. Thank you guys for your time.
Hello, I'm Han. I'm the Circular Economy Director for France, and I'm very pleased to be with you today.
So hello, I'm Nicolas Ortu. I'm the Sustainability Director for Industrial Automation, which is one of the business units of Schneider. And I'm super happy to participate to this podcast on circularity.
Hi friends, my name is Shreya Sonar. I lead Circularity from Schneider's Global Sustainability team. Nice to meet you all.
When you hear circularity, what's the first thing that comes into your mind instinctively?
For me, on my side, it's a powerful and very concrete lever to accelerate on the decarbonization and on the use, and to play an active role in preserving the resources.
I love it. It makes a lot of, it resonates very well with me. And when I hear circularity, the first thing that comes to my mind is possibility. The possibility to redesign the way we use our resources, to challenge ourselves, to challenge the take, make, and waste economy, and to unlock a lot of value that we previously were not seeing. So to me, circularity is more than an environmental concept. It's really a systems level opportunity to make products and supply chains and entire businesses more resilient and more equitable for the future.
And on my side, so of course I share what Anne and Shreya just said. So I hear a very powerful way to decrease our humanity impact on environment. And I also hear a great, wonderful business opportunity, actually. Circularity is also a business opportunity.
Listen to your point. It's interesting how circular consistently comes back to this idea of preserving value along the entire chain. What you said really highlights that the shift isn't just operational. It's a change in how we mentally map a product's journey. So it's going from straight line into a continuous loop.
And your comment really underlines something important. Circularity isn't only about materials. It's about creating intelligent systems that can track value over time. How products age, where they are, how they can be returned to the cycle. It's like adding memory to industrial processes. What is the misconception you still hear all the time?
On my side, it's more on the a second-hand product should never mean a second-rate quality. Repaired in our factories for our strategy, following a strict process, compliant to the same standard and certification, the circular products comes with the same level and duration of warranty. It must be like this, no doubt.
So on my side, what I hear very often is that circularity is an expensive investment. Well, actually, it's not. As I said, it's also a growth opportunity, and it's also a way to potentially increase our margin and make our operations more resilient. So it's a great opportunity.
Indeed, yeah. And Pao, you really asked a great question because it's one of my biggest pet peeves is when someone asks me this question and calls circularity just as a fancy way of recycling. And this is it really gets to me because recycling in the true circularity mindset is really the last resort. Exactly to the points that Anne and Nicola was saying, there's a clear market opportunity. There is a business here that we're running. And so when people simply reduce circularity to recycling, it really takes out all of the innovation and the change management and the business value that we are, we're actively seeing the evidence of.
For sure, Shreya, there is a lots of new mission and new jobs, like, for example, decarbonologue in France. So it's a new way of doing our job.
That's a great observation, in fact, and it shows where many of the barriers still sit. When you mentioned that misconception, it reminded me on how often circularity gets framed as cost, when in reality it's becoming a response to volatility and supply uncertainty. It changes the resilience equation.
And your point on recycling really resonates. It's true, recycling is just one small part of the picture. What you describe actually puts the emphasis on the higher value loops, designing for longevity, repairs, refurbishment. That's where companies unlock real gains.
Where do you think the real momentum behind circularity came from in the last decade?
For me, lots of things for sure, but main driver are more on climate commitments and regulation for sure in France, but also in Europe. Now, they penalize the lack of sustainable process and practices. The sustainable values of our customers, more than 10,000 of European commitment in the Net Zero program through Europe. So the rising of material whose demand is growing while availability not is the second main point.
No, indeed, everything that Anne said, and maybe if I even just take it a decade before that, right? When circularity first started, it was very much about resource efficiency. It was about how do we increase like our stamping efficiency in our plants, and all of those things are still there. But then came the external drivers, to Anne's point of regulation, and I think to that mix I'll also add the geopolitics of just uncertain supply chains, businesses wanting to become more resilient by themselves, and so it's really opened up a whole. The pressure for the next decade is again coming from how do we become as resilient as possible. For example, when we had COVID in 2020. This is actually where Schneider's external offering on circularity on our repacked and refurbished offers really began, and it really took off because the rest of the supply chain was disrupted. So the circular supply chain was the one that was serving our customers what it needed. So I would say the momentum changes a lot with external factors, and businesses are seeing the value and becoming more and more self-sufficient as well.
That's a great point, actually, and just to add a bit on this resiliency topic. So, of course, making our operation more resilient is always a priority for companies. And in the last years, we have seen three major events. So Shreya just spoke about the post-COVID crisis on electronic, and at that time we saw a lot of customers buying refurbished product because we were in difficulties to deliver new products. That's one. There is another one which is around rare earth scarcity. We know that one player or few players are controlling rare earth supply, and for example, we are working on using recycled permanent magnet to limit our dependency to some of those big players, and that's circularity driver which is making us more resilient. And maybe the last one is also price volatility on resources. Plastic, for example, we all know the current world context, but the price of plastic, virgin plastic, is quite volatile. So going to bio-based or even better to recycle plastic, so being again more circular, is also a way to tackle this volatility. So yeah, a lot of those external contexts are making circularity accelerating, of course.
I like how you frame that. It reinforces that circularity didn't accelerate because of one single factor, I would say, but because of several forces aligned. When you mentioned technology, regulation, customer expectations, it really shows how the ecosystem matured all at once. And suddenly the data and the tools existed to make this practical.
And I found your point about visibility very insightful. Once companies can actually measure life cycle impacts and value losses, the decision-making shifts. It stops being a theoretical sustainability conversation and becomes a real business discussion. If you had to explain circularity to someone in under a minute, how would you do it?
For me, I will say stop wasting. Start reusing everyone plays a part. That's it.
So for me, the circularity journey for a company really starts when it understands its upstream and downstream value chain quite well, and identifies the top value maximizing opportunity. Earlier I spoke about how recycling is really the last resort, and what we need to focus on is value maximization, value creation. And so there are typically, four steps. The first step is on design, and how do we really, and this is where Nicola is an expert on, how do we design and innovate our products for circularity so that they can be disassembled, so that they can be serviced later on. The next piece is on use better. Use better is about using efficient resources coming into our products, and also making sure when we manufacture our products, we're being as efficient as possible. So it's really about optimization. And here we've actually had some great partnerships with SDI, which is a green steel supplier. And we get a lot of recycled steel from the supplier, and we are able to cut down the emissions of this green steel by 70% compared to normal steel. And it's because the supplier uses an electric arc furnace. And so Schneider is purchasing these types of materials to reduce the impact of the raw materials that we buy. All this is happening before the point of sale. And really, when we talk about the next step, which is the use longer step, is once the product has entered the hands of the customer, now we start to service and manage the product. Instead of just ripping and replacing the product, we really want to make sure that the product can be used as long as possible. So going back to that value maximization, right? We want to keep that product in circulation, in use for as long as possible. And here again, Schneider has developed a lot of innovative services. We've had manual service folks go in and check on the equipment, but we also have 24/7 digitized service, which can lead to remote monitoring of the asset without physically going there. So there's a lot of cool innovation happening in the service space as well. And the last step here is to reuse, to use again, to make sure that the product stays in circulation. So here, examples could be when we're taking the product back, but we are assessing to see, can we refurbish the product and put it back on the market instead of simply putting it to recycling. So the use again piece is quite powerful, and I would say it's the newest and where a lot of the innovation is also happening on how we can challenge the take, make, waste economy. So yeah, for me, maybe it was more than a minute, but for me, it's simple. It's about use better, use longer, and use again.
Yeah, it's a great definition, Shreya. And just to reinforce one particular topic, because it's happen to be part of my responsibilities, design of the product. So what we used to say that 80% of the product impact is already determined at design. So the choice we are making at design are really making are having a big effect on the impact. And for that, we need to eco-design our offer. We need solid eco-design. We need data-based eco-design, relying on life cycle assessment. And we need transparent data to show to our customers. So that's for me a critical point of circularity. It all starts with the design of the product. Of course, then you have all all the other topics that Shreya also mentioned, supply chain, take back, etc. But design is core.
Yes, and if I can complete all those explanations, yes, we have more than 20,000 products available today and regularly to give to our customer a carbon footprint that is much better than the new, and it's complementary to the new. It's a good solution. It's very concrete, and we are able to supply all the use better, use again, and use longer proposals.
Yeah, I love this panel because we have Nicola focused on design and Anne focused on the use again piece. So it's really a complete picture that we're getting here on today's podcast.
I love the clarity of your explanation. What you said really captures the essence. It's about decoupling value creation from resource consumption. When you frame it that way, it becomes clear that circularity isn't an add-on. It's a redesign on how we think about our products and services.
Yes, and your answer shows how something that sounds simple actually touches many layers. The simplicity of the definition hides the complexity of the transformation underneath.
Which industries could benefit the most from circular practices today?
I guess on my side, because 45% of emission of CO2 and GHG comes from manufacturing and use of product, then we are all concerned. And every industry that produce or use goods carries significant impact potentially. So for me, we can do act, and we can act, and then we can have a strong impact, and we see it with our supplier, because we engage more than 4,000 of our suppliers in this circular loop, but also a lot of customers that have contractualized with us on that subject to be sure to be able to develop circular flows. So for me, each of us has in his role to play the circular game.
So just to concur on that, I believe manufacturing industries are extremely important. I'm not sure if we can say that they are the one who will benefit the most, but of course we need to tackle the way we produce goods. So it's 45% of global GHG emissions. You know, how we consume, how we produce. So that's really what we need to tackle first, to my view.
Yeah, no, I love that. And also like what Anne said about, every industry, every company can benefit. The challenge of dematerialization is it's not just for benefit. I mean, it's not just for benefiting customers, but it's kind of a license to operate. So I really resonate with that point. And Schneider serves a lot of industries, a lot of end markets, but I'll just pick one to talk about today. The building sector, Karen, is really a big contributor to worldwide solid waste. We have a lot of customers in this segment, and it's about 30 to 40% of worldwide solid waste comes from the construction industry. And this is unsustainable, both financially and for the planet. So shifting away from demolition and new construction to retrofitting is really a smart move for the industry to be making.
I thought your examples were spot on. What you said really illustrates how broad the opportunity is. Any industry dealing with material-intensive assets or long product life cycles can gain from this shift. And your point about shared infrastructures made it even clearer. When sectors collaborate, the impact scales fast.
And I like your comment about new revenue models. It's true that circularity opens paths where companies generate value through services, performance, and uptime rather than just units sold. That's a completely different way of thinking about industrial growth. What's the biggest barrier to making circularity mainstream?
It's a great question, actually. My thinking on that, in reality, circularity is not a new topic, right? I mean, consumers, for example, have been doing circular for decades or even more. Like we used to recycle, to reuse bottles, for example, glass bottles. We are all used to buy second-hand car, refurbished phones, etc., etc. So that's an habit that we have as consumers. And it's a bit difficult for industries to switch to that. So one of the barriers, and I think Anne was touching that at the very beginning of the discussion, quality and safety. When you speak about industries, of course, they want to buy safe and qualitative products. So one of the barriers for B2B, for industries, is to ensure them that the circular products that we're going to sell them are of good quality and good safety. That's, for me, if we can break these barriers, then we're going to unleash this circular business. I'm sure about it.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I think on a similar point, for me, the biggest gap is actually on making circularity mainstream. It's not a technological gap. It's really a mindset shift. It's taking the idea to the supply chain and making it happen. So most companies that want to go circular, they see the value. They know that the technology is there, but it's when it comes to actually putting in place local systems and circularity, unlike decarbonization, where if you decarbonize 1 ton of carbon in one part, it's a global impact. But circularity, you need to have a system set up in every location, in every region. And that is its own sort of localization is both an opportunity, but also a challenge to set up a new infrastructure. The other challenge I would say is like, our products are today, not all of our products are designed for circularity. So going back to what Nicola was saying, that design is really at the heart of circularity. And sometimes at Schneider, that can also be a challenge because the good news is our products are made to last for long. Sometimes our products last between 15, 20, 30, 40 years. So when we put in place the design of today, we're designing for the services that we will deliver 40 years from now. So it's a very interesting challenge, but it's something that can be done, and it's something that we are doing. So I would say the barrier isn't technological. It's really just doing it and doing it well in every region.
Just to give a great example of what you mentioned, Shreya, design for reparability is extremely important. And that's something where Schneider has been investing a lot of effort, but making sure that the new offers that we design are better repairable is one among several examples on how we contribute to that, right?
And if I can also show the voice of the customer, I was with a customer yesterday saying me that often the barriers are internals for them also on the tendering team mainly, when you have to redesign or to validate a product that are circular. Sometimes, as you said, Nicola, you could be afraid by the innovation or the transformation, but anyway, the strategy we choose to provide some product with the same level of quality and security can help them to go further in that way. And we see that in cloud and service provider, in transportation. Now they agree and they go further on that subject. And internally also, sometimes we face some barrier because it's a completely, as you said, Shreya, a change of mindset. If we see on the global supply chain, we create more reference, we create more line of repair with less volume. So it's really a change of way of doing. But anyway, they have agreed and they see the interest and the value of deploying circular flow for them in a short-term and long-term value on waste, on raw materials, resilience. So we commit, but it takes time sometimes.
So, and one of the barrier, as we both mentioned, is the fear of some of our industrial customers of quality safety. Would you say that the fact that the manufacturers themselves are refurbishing their own product is also helping to break this barrier? Because I guess if I am a customer, I prefer to buy something which has been refurbished by the manufacturer and not by another player. So, would you say this is really helping to break this barrier?
Yes, for sure. For main customer that we have in transportation, cloud and service provider, and also major installer, it's very secure for them to choose a manufacturer like Schneider that propose those products with the same warranty, same quality. They can visit our factories and the line of repair. So really clearly, we are transparent on that subject, and it's a main critical point for them. Yes.
Right.
The way you describe it made something very clear. The challenge isn't the technology, it's the system. And you're right, so many of the barriers sit in the framework companies to take decisions. Procurement rules, accounting structures, incentives. Challenging that requires alignment that we are not used to.
And your point about culture was really insightful. We have operated under a linear definition of growth for decades. What you say shows that circularity asks organizations to shift their mindset as much as their processes.
How did Schneider Electric's circularity strategy come to life? And what triggered the shift towards a more sustainable, resource-efficient business approach?
Yeah, this question is funny to me because technically Schneider's circularity strategy came to life when the company was born over 190 years ago, when we were selling heavy machinery and providing services to keep that machinery in its best shape was always part of the business model. But more recently, the way we started to formally talk about circularity is in 2015 when we launched a eco design program, and I think eco design again was part always of the ethos of Schneider, but we started to formally talk about it. We also had a lot of focus on resource efficiency, as I mentioned. And then going into 2019, this is where we really started to see the value of the use again model a lot more. And we started to get a team in place to have products that would be on the refurbished and repacked offers. And in 2020 is when we actually launched that. So, the use again part of our circular approach that I mentioned is the newest and where we've seen a lot of innovation come into place. We've also had some great recognition from the World Economic Forum. And the nice part is, going into 2020, coming into 2026 and looking forward in the future, we also have some commitments that are for the first time, some new commitments. We've had focus on design, but now we're also going into circularity beyond the point of sale. And Nicola will talk a bit more about that.
Yes, agreed, Shreya, but we began our sustainability journey back in 2005. And because we have also strong service culture for our customer, we have been repairing product in some of our French factories since then. So over the years, we have worked to scale this repair stream with a significant acceleration during the COVID, as you said previously. But I guess that for us, as for our family, for our grandmother, then we have the circularity into our DNA.
Yeah, it's great actually, and it's true that Schneider has a long track record, a long track record on sustainability. And what I want to mention now is what we do next. So Shreya started to speak a little bit about our future commitments. So we have a great program that we are just starting now actually with very bold commitment for 2030. I'm not going to list all of them because there are a lot, but some of them are extremely tied to circularity. We are taking a very strong commitment on future design, so making sure that our new offers will be better designed, taking circularity into account even more than before. So we are increasing the ambition here. We have a lot of ambitions as well on responsible material, making sure that we include more recycled metals, recycled plastic, etc., in our products. And we have a strong commitment, which is called Longer Better, which is really around our circular services. And here again, we want to accelerate even more on those type of circular services. So you have a lot of details on our Schneider communication, but we are coming one more time with a very ambitious 2030 program on circularity and sustainability in general.
Just to add something, to add something to what Nicola says, we have also, and I hear a lot and often, the subject of the cannibalization. Circularity and circular product will not and will probably never cannibalize the new product and the needs of the new product. First of all, because we don't have enough product for that. And even if we massify our collect and take back, we repair a few percentage of what we are able to collect. So then it will never be a subject. So it's very important to add this topic because of I heard it a lot internally.
I really liked how you traced the origins. It shows that a strategy didn't appear out of nowhere. It builds naturally on capabilities we already had. What you said also about services and digitalization made it obvious that circularity was an evolution, not a disruption.
And your point on customer partnership stood out to me. Moving from transactional relationships to continuous lifecycle collaboration really captures the strategic shift behind circularity on our context.
As we wrap up our first episode, something really stands out. Circularity isn't something new we suddenly invented. It's a principle that has existed for centuries. And we're now bringing it back into how we design, operate, and think about our products.
And Nicola, Shreya, thank you for giving us such a clear starting point.
Yes, thanks a lot for this invitation. It was very interesting to discuss on all those passionate subjects. But I just want to add a comment. We have absolutely to stay humble because there is a lot to do again, always. And we have also a lot to learn all together. And with embarking also our supplier, our customer, everyone on the adventure, it will be key for the future of the circularity too.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone for having us on this podcast. It was extremely interesting. Maybe my last comment is grab opportunities on circularity. As we said, it's also a business opportunity, and as soon as you will speak about total cost of ownership, reduction of total cost of ownership to your customers, you will see their eyes opening. So discuss about that with your customers, and you will unleash some great business opportunities.
Indeed, yeah. Thanks, Karen and Pao, for organizing this event for us, and lovely meeting you, Anne and Nicola, on this type of forum. I think for me, I'll also say, don't be afraid to innovate. This is a really cool time in circularity where there's still a lot of exploration that can be done there. And so, as long as you have the willingness to, run after the value creation pools, it's an exciting time to be in circularity. So cheers to that, and looking forward to 2030.
And thanks to everyone listening. See you in the next episode.